Hello, my name's Tim Grant at the Centre for Forensic Linguistics here at Aston University, and we've helped the police bring some important cases to court. Although handwritten text may be thought to be declining, and the sort of text that we are looking at, threatening materials, diaries, suicide notes and so on, we do see a lot of handwritten texts. But there's also the growth of electronic communication, the explosion in emails, in texting and other forms of communication, which are all text-based. And traditional forensics of analysing fingerprints, papers, inks and so on can't touch that stuff. Computer forensics is obviously a great help. But it's fairly easy to be anonymous online, and certainly to feel anonymous online. And it can be difficult for the police to trace the particular origin of a message. So in those senses, the need for forensic linguistics is growing rather than shrinking. The woman's mobile phone sent a series of messages during the day, and she died in a house fire late that evening. The police have reason to believe that the woman was actually alive much earlier in the day than the fire. So the question is, who sent those text messages from her phone? And the police believe there's two main... In the Christopher Burke's case, which was a Staffordshire police case, Christopher came under suspicion for the murder of his wife. His wife had died in a house fire in the evening, and the story was that she'd been pottering about at home and had sent a series of text messages while Christopher Burke's was out running their joint business. Now the police became suspicious of this story and believed that some of the text messages sent during the day were more likely to be sent by Christopher Burke's than Amanda Burke's. And so we were able to perform a comparison between the two, and that comparison showed that they both had distinctive styles of texting from one another and were fairly consistent in those styles, and that the disputed messages were more consistent with Christopher Burke's texting than with the wife's texting. So forensic linguistics isn't limited to investigating and providing evidence for the police and others. We've got much wider interest in that. We're interested in the application of linguistics to all of the judicial and forensic processes. So we're interested in how police interview, how you ask questions in police interview to be effective in asking questions. We're interested in the linguistics in the courtroom. We're interested in the written law. Your mobile phone contract is written in an odd sort of language. Can it effectively be written in plainer English and so on?
I let them know what's happening, Noops, because they're not too sure. Roughly, not everything, but get me.
I don't know, man. I just say it. I don't know how to ball up one nuke quickly.
And this was an entirely different sort of case. It wasn't about who had written something, but it was about the meaning of some communications. So in this case, there was an internet relay chat conversation, which essentially comprised a conspiracy to murder. Now, this chat conversation used a lot of internet abbreviations, initialisms, and was overlaid with East London street slang. So in that case, the question was, what did this language mean, and could I help the court, the judge and the jury understand the meaning? And there was also a phone conversation that Ogundele had made from prison, which also formed part of that case. And again, the question was, once the phone conversation had been transcribed, what was being meant? So to give an example, on the internet relay chat, there was the phrase, "I'll get the fiend to duppy her den." So what does to duppy mean, and how can we find out what duppying is? In Jamaican folklore, a duppy is a ghost. So in terms of the semantic field, to duppy someone might be considered to harm them or make them dead. And in the phone conversation, there was another phrase, "I'd board that one ute quickly den." And so what does to bore mean? In standard English, obviously it means to be boring, to be tedious, but within this community, to bore means to stab. So these were clearly threats in both cases, and those determinations of meaning is something else that we do. As a fairly new forensic science, there's lots of primary research that needs to be done. There's all sorts we know about linguistics, which we don't know how well it applies in the forensic sphere. So an example of that would be the sort of analysis I did on the recent Crime Watch case, where we were given a set of letters and asked what sort of person wrote these letters. Now, what I was able to try and work out was that they were a woman and that they were over 60 and that they were from the south of England and so on. But the primary research backing up that analysis is patchy at best. We know that there are gender differences between men and women in the way they use language, but to turn those differences round and say that these letters are written by a woman is very difficult. And we don't really have the basic science there to tell us how well we can do that or not. So as well as the science at the moment, there is a lot of linguistic intuition, guesswork if you want to call it that, or expertise involved. And we're chipping away at that to make our methods more rigorous.